Yes, we'll call the meeting to order and start with our roll call.
All right. Emmett Hopkins, looks like he's not here today. Alex Goodman is also not here. Josh O.
Yes, thank you.
Kenna.
Here.
Lisa looks like is not here. Zeno.
I'm here.
Philip. Ambrosia is also not here. Diana.
Present.
And Sandra.
Here.
Okay, thank you so much. Can we do our review of action items from last time?
Yes, there were a couple of items from last meeting that were going to be taken to City Council, so it'd be nice to hear about the process on that. One was about the Sustainable Transportation Grant, and the other one was about the Vision Zero action plan. And then there was going to be a public workshop on the 4th. So it'd be interesting to hear if that happened. And I have a report on.
Joshua, we couldn't hear you.
Sorry. 2 items went to or were sent to City Council from last meeting. One was about the Vision Zero plan. Another was about the Sustainable Transportation Grant. So just looking for a progress report on that front. There was going to be a public workshop on the 4th and also a compost event on the 6th. That's it.
You managed to follow up on that?
Not right now.
Not quite yet. We'll get staff report first. So do we have any comments from the public about items not on the agenda? All right, thank you. And anybody have any statements of conflict of interest today? All right, so we'll move on to our planning department report if you're ready.
Yes, thank you. So first off, at the last council meeting, council approved the canopy project, which is at the north end of town behind the O'Reilly office buildings. That's an 80-unit townhome residential project. They will be having their design review board meeting at the April 23rd DRB meeting. The other item on that agenda is the St. Vincent de Paul project had a preliminary or a review on April 2nd with the DRB. They wanted some additional documents and review items to come back. So they are coming back for a hopefully final review on that project.
So John,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interject, but that project was, the city council voted to not support that project.
Correct. Yeah, they're still going through the design review portion of it, so that if they are able to secure funding in some other manner, if they are approved, they have 3 years on that permit. So
Great, thank you.
yeah, I was gonna let you guys discuss that part of it. But anyways, the active transportation plan that the county is working with the city on, they were supposed to have a update at the April 9th Planning Commission meeting. We've had to postpone that to May 14th. Due to not enough people on our planning commission able to make that meeting. So that will be postponed to that date. Are also, staff is working with the consultant to do another outreach event for that plan. So the milestone 2 update was kind of incorporating all the plans and policies that we would see in that project.
John, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but what project is it that you're talking about?
The active transportation plan.
Okay, great, thanks.
That's SCTA is developing for the countywide and then also for jurisdiction specific. The consultant is also going to have a booth at the Apple Blossom Parade. They're going to attend the Saturday date, which is April 27th, I believe. So they're going to be looking for additional feedback. And then, as I mentioned, come back to the Planning Commission in May. And then staff is also going to hold an additional workshop event after that planning commission meeting. So the second or third week of May, with planning staff and then some of the members of the bike coalition and tour included. The Hotel Sebastopol has a item coming at our next special planning commission meeting on April 16th. That's a development agreement to extend their entitlements for another few years. That will go to planning commission first and then eventually to the city council for final approval. And the Woodmark project is still moving forward with their construction. They are hoping to have phase 1 done, I believe, by the end of this year. And as far as the sustainable transportation grant that the city was awarded, the city has selected a consultant and we're in the contract negotiation phase right now. And hopefully that will kick off here in early spring, summer for that project. I think that's it.
I missed the date that the planning commission is looking at this. What is the date?
For which
The
item?
new date, is it May?
For the active transportation plan?
Yeah.
Yes, May 14th.
May 1st.
Yeah.
Okay,
So can we get some clarity on what happened with the letter about the sustainable transportation grant?
Yes, so the letter that was sent to staff, we did incorporate.
Do you guys know what we're talking about? This is the letter from last meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
We did incorporate that into one of the questions that we asked the consultants that were the 2 consultants that we selected. Both of them answered it very well. And I have confidence that they're going to be able to look at all those options and opinions, and through their, both of them had kind of a couple of variations on their public outreach scope. So that's definitely included in that part of the project.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for planning staff? All right, thank you. Council report?
Well, I'm going to chime in to note that Councilmember Maurer was quite forward-thinking in the discussion point regarding the canopy project. I think she knows what I'm referring to. It had to do with retaining a tree. And she was successful in persuading the developer to make a change that would retain a particular tree that had been important to the community around there. Is that correct? And move an entire house. But other than that, it was nothing. So she moved a house. So I just wanted to recognize that, important to this group. And then also the Recology, I'm sorry, not the Recology, but the garbage RFP, the request for proposals that went out, did incorporate a number of questions that focused on sustainability and issues that would be important to this group of citizens. So those factors will be considered when the garbage contract, those who apply respond to the RFP, when those applicants are assessed. So I think that's a success. And then other than that, we have the water sewer issue ratepayer rates will be on the agenda at a special meeting on April 23. Anything else? You go. Okay, I'm being prompted. The fire department, the fire ad hoc, we have our next city council meeting on April 16 at 6 p.m. That's our normal meeting. And the 2 big issues there will be the fire department fire ad hoc report out when the future of fire services will be considered by the city council. And then there's also a fire engineer position that's being considered. And also, I understand, a community development, the new planning director expanded role, which I think is being described as a community development director. Is that correct, John? So those issues may be of interest to this group. We also are likely to see the ceasefire item, and hopefully, if I have any impact, earlier on the agenda. That's all I have to add.
Is the council taking up the meeting format question again?
Thanks for the question. The Zoom format question is on this agenda, but given the many issues, time-consuming issues that will be addressed on this agenda, it's likely that that item will be bumped to the May meeting. That's what I expect, unless we're incredibly efficient. And well, the
Thank
fact of
you.
the matter is most of the time is spent, a substantial majority of the time is spent on public comment, and we do not limit public comment for items that are actually on the agenda. So it'll be in the public's control.
All right. Again, thank you guys for your service to our city council members
And right
staff.
back at you, I have to say.
Anybody have any questions for our council members?
I have a remark about the waste proposal. I saw that you're waiting for. Very nice. I don't know where the point of discussion is as I'm new to this, but I was kind of like just thinking to myself, another way to cut is the street sweeper is a significant source of impact, and it's not quite as necessary as it comes around. I often see, I live downtown, so I see it often not sweeping very much, and it's very busy. And I think that we can reduce the amount of times that it comes into the city, which is both, I think, wear and tear on the roads and a source of emissions.
Interesting comment. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I had just a thought that I wanted to express. I'm concerned that the financial situation of the city makes us overly cautious. And I know I'm not completely informed about what happens at the city council, but reading in the Sebastopol Times the report of how the meeting went about this low-income development at that location, at least reading that, I felt that maybe in line with what staff now is saying, it should have kind of been sent back for further deliberation and investigation. And I'm concerned that we're getting overly like inward looking and not really take advantage of opportunities and possibilities in our wider environment.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So what is being referred to here is the St. Vincent de Paul project, affordable housing project that was planned for 845 Gravenstein Highway North, where Horizon Shine Village was located. And that was the project that John says is still before the DRB. I wasn't aware of that, but I understand the strategy. Yeah, so there are implications for the council saying no to that project. The council did vote down that project. The majority decided that it would not go forward. And yeah, there's some, I happen to be a person voting in favor of the project, which just demonstrates that there was a variety of opinions on that project. But yes, there are some downsides to it, but there was a clear and Councilmember Mara can speak to this because she voted in the majority, but there was a clear recognition of risk and impact on staff.
I would like to move this discussion on because I don't think this particular issue is really relevant. I mean, everything is relevant to climate, but I don't think it's really relevant to this committee in the long run. So I'm going to move us back to our agenda. Go ahead, Steve.
Hi there. Couple of things. I know the city is
I've been on the ropes for quite some time now, and it's difficult to imagine how we can advance some of our climate things going forward when there are so many critical issues that the council has been facing. There have been a couple of items that have come forward. One, I guess, recently with the Vision Zero. It's sort of a process thing of how can we get things moving at the council level that we complete here at the committee level in a timely manner to make a difference. And I personally worked with our energy task force on the letter that went to council quite some months ago now regarding the 2025 code update, and 26 other cities in California managed to get it together. Granted, they're not facing the issues that we are, and send letters urging the state to look at using Cal Green as a way to move on with electrification. And I just want to make sure that we can do those things at the same time as we're facing these kind of historic headwinds. So it's part of what our committee is here to do, advise and consent the council. So we want to make sure that those things do happen in a timely manner. Thank you.
Did the Agenda Review Committee receive that letter?
So I think John is going to chime in here to give an update.
So I have sent that off again to the city clerk to get on the agenda review committee. The one thing that I did ask, and I spoke with Joshua and Kenna, is when we do have, if there are items that are time sensitive, when they do come in, I would request that, if there's a deadline on when these letters need to come in before, adoption of what we're putting a letter of support in for, if that can be included in the email that's sent. Because I know, there's a lot of items that come forth to the city council agenda, but if there's items that are time sensitive, I know that just from talking to the city clerk, when those come to the agenda setting committee, kind of those get bumped to the head of the line. So absolutely. I would just, if you have any inkling, just put a time sensitive stamp on it, and then that way we can make sure that it gets to the city council in a timely manner. Because it is, when I was asked if there was any time sensitive matters to those two items, I was not sure. So that could very well be why it's taken a little bit longer than it needs to have. So I apologize on that aspect of it, but just moving forward for the group, if there are time sensitive things, it would be great to know beforehand.
So is this letter still in play? Like, should we resend it with a time stamp on it?
No, I've already included in my most recent email to the city clerk for both the Vision Zero resolution and the electrification that these need to be heard as soon as possible. So hopefully they'll be on the May agenda, one of the two May meetings.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and just to confirm, those have been advanced to the agenda setting committee, and to reinforce for staff, there's a lot happening there. So a lot comes through staff that then is funneled off to the agenda setting committee. And just being really clear, this has got to be heard, I don't know, within a month or something. Will make life a lot easier for our staff. So, but yes, we do now have it. Thanks. And whoever emailed me about it, I think it may have been Steve. Thank you for doing that, because reached out to me. I then reached out to John, and he took care of everything like he always does. So thank you.
And is the Vision Zero resolution on the agenda? Is that coming up as well?
Yeah, so both of the Vision Zero resolution and the electrification support letter, I've asked the city clerk to get on the next agenda setting, which I think would be next Wednesday. Is that correct? I think it's the Wednesday after the council meeting. So
Yeah, it would be May 3rd, but just to be clear, those items are not on the April 16 agenda,
Correct,
but
yeah.
they are going to be considered at the May 3 agenda setting meeting.
Yeah, so at our discussion last time about Vision Zero, there was the wish to hear more about how other cities had gone through this. And so in the meantime, we got information about Cotati, how they have implemented Vision Zero, and the process of getting to that point. And I wonder whether it would be helpful for City Council to have that included in the letter of support.
John, is that something that could be included in the agenda item? So the comment here is that now there's information about the Katati resolution. Should it be part of the agenda item?
I believe so. I think it would be helpful information for both staff and the council and the public. So
Okay, so then the transportation working group will forward that information.
yeah,
And maybe adopt a letter that we send with the resolution a bit as an appendix.
sure. Yeah, as an
Uh,
appendix or an attachment
right.
or
Okay.
however. Yeah. But I would just, when you guys do send that over, just make sure, just to remind me that it needs to go with the Vision Zero resolution you've already sent off. So that way it doesn't get lost again.
Great. I feel like we're sorting ourselves. It's good. Any other questions for council or staff before we move on? All right. So our regular agenda, we have our working group reports for activities not on the agenda. And the only thing on the agenda is zero waste, which is being tabled for until next meeting because Ambrosia was unable to attend. So any working groups want to report?
Just a quick report back on the compost event this last weekend. It was really smooth. In general, spirits were good and folks had a good time. We had about 4 or 5 volunteers, as well as myself. Thanks to Steve and Lisa for really hanging in there. And in general, it seems that that's sort of the need. If we have maybe 4 to 6 volunteers kind of checking in with the line of cars and with the people at the pile, then we can just keep things moving pretty swiftly and everybody has an easier time out there. So far so good. There's another event May 11th. I am frankly trying to build up more volunteerism on this event over the course of this year so that I can kind of step back from being a crucial point person eventually. And I'm going to be keeping talking to the committee about it and also looking for volunteers in the list of people who come to the event. So I have at present 3 out of 300 or so people have responded from the emails to say, yes, I'll come about. So we'll keep working on that percentage over time. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other working groups have anything to add about your activities? Steve?
Hi, I'm going to talk about from the finance working group. Now, we don't raise our head all that often, but there's something that I think does require some attention. The city is seriously considering 2 years from now having a utility users tax increase. And that's not surprising given the financial state the city is in. And it is really an opportunity to examine our utility users tax in terms of money for climate. Now, I understand that there isn't necessarily going to be money from the city to spend on climate, but what we can do is have incentives within the rate structure that allow us to at least encourage environmentally sustainable activities like electrification. There are some definite barriers to doing that. The biggest barrier is that the PG&E has said in years past that they would need $1 million to do the programming change allowed so that cities could have a different rate for the utility users tax for natural gas versus electricity. And that has been one of the real stumbling blocks for cities to do just that. $1 million, no one wants to do that. Arcata actually did this quite a few years ago, a decade ago. They spent some $700,000 to do it, surprisingly. The cities of Berkeley, Oakland, Albany, County of San Francisco, and I think a few more years ago passed a resolution encouraging the state to do just this, to have the PUC or some entity fund this $1 million necessity to have a differential rate. Now, we have a 2-year time frame, and it's one of those things that would actually take contacting legislative leaders, maybe Chris Rogers, our newly elected leader. He's quite involved in environmental and sustainable issues, and some others, Nancy Skinner from the East Bay. We need to find some way to stir up the $1 million before the city makes a decision on this issue 2 years down the road. It's probably our only opportunity in the next 5 years to actually have an impact financially on decisions that are made. People that electrify don't want to have to pay extra money for taxes in this case than they would. If we had a differential rate, we could incentivize electrification instead of penalizing those who end up going with electricity, and then sometimes some years it costs more because they've chosen that route. So we want to help tilt the playing field from gas to encouraging the investment in electricity. So those that are part of the committee, or if you know someone else, I'm hoping to reorganize this effort. Emmett, years ago, we talked about this and looked into it and saw this stumbling block, and it seemed insurmountable. But 2 years, we got some time. Maybe we can put together a coalition that would allow that to happen. So I'm just putting that out there as the Finance Committee. If no one's interested in working on it, then that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That was interesting. Something to think about. Any other working groups?
On behalf of the Zero Waste Working Group, just wanted to identify that the Zero Waste Hero article focusing on retrograde coffee and Danielle Connor, one of the two owners, was published and received very positive reviews.
Yes, and thank you for the reminder, because I also wanted to say that we got like a bunch of emails about people responding to, so that people really noticed that article and that highlight of a zero waste champion. So yay, Zero Waste Committee that's not here. Any other working groups that have anything to say? Do we have our contractor event going on?
So Alex had the residential version of a home and efficiency event maybe last week, and it wasn't super well attended, but I think it was really positive to meet representatives from Sebastopol, Sonoma Clean Power, and Bayron. And then we're going to have ours this Thursday, and I'm very excited for it. And I hope that we're able to help contractors see what is positive about helping with home efficiency without worrying so much about the fluidity of energy incentives.
Great. And are you getting RSVPs?
We're getting a few, RSVPs. So we've got 9 at the moment, but I think these guys aren't very good at RSVPing.
Yeah, I have to say the people I'm sending your way are not RSVPers.
Yeah, and we're gonna sweeten the pot with a little pizza too. So if you
okay, perfect.
if you want to let people know that we can, just bribe them.
All right.
But it's a good moment to meet these larger and different entities that are trying to work with us so very hard at electrification.
Do we have any lessons learned from the low attendance at the April 4th event? Or is that something we should discuss when Alex is here?
We could discuss it when Alex is here, but the main learning, I think, would be promotion of the event. And it could be location too, but I think most of it was, I think the time was good, but I think that we could promote it better. And it could be also a moment in time when we're having some customer withdrawal from this kind of activity due to other economic circumstances.
Yeah, because the programming was excellent for that event. And so I think we can talk more about how to pull the people in that want the info. Any other working group reports?
Just real quickly, the metrics working group met with the Bayren representatives. I think that was 2 weeks ago now. And we had an hour presentation where we showed them the work that we had done. And a lot of that was really around the documentation of the metrics that we identified as key metrics, and a suggestion to them that they could use a similar documentation in their processes. They're looking at doing dashboard metrics for all the cities in the county. And there may be some avenues for collaboration between our working group and the Bayren representatives that are working on the metrics dashboard.
It's not Bayren, right?
Excuse me?
RCPA.
Thank you. Thank you. RCPA, too many acronyms floating around. And I think they were receptive. That what we were trying to show is that it's not just showing the numbers, but actually doing some analysis into the results that you get. And they realize that that is a gap in what they've identified for their activities right now. And there might be some other technical issues along the way that they're hoping to iron out. They did an early presentation of their work, and it kind of follows more of what you see in their greenhouse gas inventory reports that come out every 2 years. It's more of an accessible version of that with some additional metrics added on. And what we were doing as a group, which we can present, was taking what is publicly available data sets and doing metrics from that, since we don't have some access to the data that these other governmental entities do. So for instance, PG&E, all the investor-owned utilities have data sets that are publicly accessible for electricity and gas. The data for registered vehicles is out there. This is all by zip code. And there's also data on solar installations throughout the state that are tied to an investor-owned utility as an intertie. So we have data on all that, and trying to get some gasoline sales data also by zip code. So I'm actually creating a website that does this for this analysis of those metrics for every zip code in the state. So it's, it's a big task to learn how to do that and to assemble it into something that's presentable, but it's kind of something I've enjoyed learning about and doing. So it'll be something that a city can compare to other cities, any city that's in this list, or a county or a zip code. So you can see the trends. We want to see natural gas going down. We want to see gasoline going down. Those are some pretty obvious trends that we have to see. Otherwise, we're never going to meet these goals. And, as we've said before to the council and to this committee, we're the worst when it comes to natural gas in Sonoma County. Sebastopol, the 95472 zip code, we consume more than any other city in the county. And That is not okay. We have our work cut out for us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, please.
So this dashboard also presented to the board of directors of the legislation review. And NICE Hinton is radical that. And we have two councilmen that meet around Sonoma Tower and zero waste. And so it would be good in the future to have a more working together. I mean, we go to this meeting, she goes to the meeting, and it's hard really to conflict on it. How can we solve that problem?
I just want to also add to that, we are doing a lot of work managing our communication with the different county entities. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. At the meeting with Alex, a person named Jada with our CPA, and I had a brief chat, and she wants to invite the Climate Action Committee to fill out a form with actions and proposals that, where we can work with them. And there's a potential to actually find money for activities within our area with her, by increasing our interactions with people like her. We're gonna do better at bringing things in. And not only will she ask us as a group for our input, but she is also looking for any individuals, which you can contact me about, and I'll give you her email, to fill out a, a questionnaire on what they can do to, as they look at next year's activities and actions and proposals.
Do you think we could bring this to next month's meeting as an agenda item of working with our CPA?
Yeah, I'm getting better at this. This just occurred to me.
Yeah, no, I'm just, we have a big item to discuss today. This is a real, it's worth a real discussion, but we need to move on. So I'm thinking, can we talk about it next time? Okay. Thank you guys. So we will move on to our potential action item here, our response to the recommendation by the city manager to remove staff support from the Climate Action Committee. And we do have our city attorney present. Thank you so much, to help advise us on, what the implications of different pathways we might choose are. So just to frame the issue, our city manager is looking at ways to bring our city expenses under tighter control. And one of the proposals that he made that the council did approve moving forward, and what they approved wasn't doing it, it was exploring it. So just to clarify, but what's one of the proposals was to remove staff support from this committee. And as we can see, we have 2 planning staff here and a tech person, and we have the use of the room and all the equipment, and that costs the city money. So the question for this group is, what is our response? So one of the things that part of this, council saying, yes, explore this, was please have the committee say what they want or what their opinion is. So it's on our plate to say what our recommendation is around what to do. So there's some options on the table. One of them is we could disband the committee as a official committee, that would be, and all of these are recommendations we would make to the city, right? We don't decide what happens to this committee. That's the council's decision. But we would make a recommendation that the committee just be disbanded. And then the city would no longer have a city-appointed Climate Action Committee, and this committee could reform as an independent, non-governmental group, much like there used to be a similar group, I think, called the Climate Action Committee or Climate Action Group. So that's one option, is just stop and then reform as an independent group and bring recommendations to the city like any other citizens group does. Number 2 would be disband and then reform, but request in that reformation that we say, okay, city council, we recommend that you disband our group as a city committee, but we would like you to continue sending a liaison from the council to our citizen group. So we would have a citizen group that is no longer subject to Brown Act and all the constraints of that, but that has requested a liaison from the council. So there would be an official connection. So that's one option of disbanding and reforming. Another would be instead of, or as well as, we can be creative, and I'm sure Larry's going to clarify which of these are realistic, that we could request a seat on another committee. So we could say, well, we won't be a committee anymore. We'll be a citizens group, but we would like some other city official committee, such as the Planning Commission, to have a seat that is dedicated to a climate person or a person from this climate group. So we could say, we recommend you disband us, but that you establish a seat on the Planning Commission that is filled by someone from the citizen group to act as a liaison and a voting member of the Planning Commission representing climate issues. I don't know what other boards there could be that would be applicable. Planning seems like the most relevant. We could recommend that the committee continue with reduced support. So what that might look like, we could reduce the amount of support we need by having less frequent meetings. We could reduce staff presence at our meetings. We could request that the council make I don't know what it would be, a declaration, an ordinance, something, an official statement that this committee could meet without Zoom participation, that our public participation could be from in-person meetings. And the staff would still need to potentially schedule space, post agendas, and post action minutes. We would have to provide them with those agendas and action minutes, but we would no longer have live streaming, recording, Zooms, or our lovely staff here, which are so useful to us. Or we can recommend to the city that we continue as we are, that we're an essential body, and that we think it's worth the money. So those are the options as I see them on the table. Does anyone have any other options that they can think of that they would want added to this list? I don't want to discuss them yet. I want to list the options and then just ask Larry for his input, and then we'll discuss what the options are. Does anyone see any other options? All right, so thank you. Larry, do you have any response to any of those options or clarification?
Well, I have not really looked into the question about the potential of having a seat on another committee, for example, the Planning Commission. So that subject would have to be studied, I believe. I'm really not prepared today to delve into that. I will just say in general that city councils decide what types of membership they want on committees such as the Planning Commission rather, and Design Review Board, and et cetera. The city council establishes the criteria for appointment to those particular bodies, and they would have to have a lot of discussion as to how they would formulate that. However, I'm sure it would be theoretically possible. It just isn't something that I've studied, or whether other cities do it, for example. What would be the criteria? What are the types of matters the Planning Commission's study and so forth? All those things would have to be looked into. Obviously, your first two items, the citizens group, independent, I've helped with some of those groups in the distant past, and obviously various types of private associations are all possible, and you could continue with your work and be able to comment and do things independently. You could also do that with a liaison from city council, theoretically. So those are all possible. What I was asked to look into and have some information about with me today is the situation of reduced or no staff support, whether this committee could continue as essentially a standing committee of the city council, but basically in many ways support itself. And in doing that, I looked into the actual Brown Act requirements for conduct of the standing committees. The city has a longstanding tradition of going what I guess I would say is way beyond the strict requirements of the Brown Act, doing things that we've done for so long. You sort of start thinking of them as givens, so to speak. But when you examine the Brown Act itself, you really find out that there aren't that many formal requirements of the Brown Act. So theoretically, I think it would be possible for the Climate Action Committee to continue to essentially support itself, but it would take the agreement of the city council because it would deviate from what is basically the norm. And I'll just give you a few examples of that. The main requirements of the Brown Act are that you timely post an agenda, but the agenda requirements are really very few. The time, the location of the meeting, and as few as 20 words about the general substance of the agenda item to be discussed. When you start getting into things like elaborate multi-page staff reports and agenda items that are quite involved and all those different kinds of things, those are not, strictly speaking, requirements of the Brown Act. Those are what we do as a tradition here when we want to do a thorough job as a staff. You're looking at 20-page staff reports, but an agenda title can be as little as 20 words and be legal and meet the requirements of the Brown Act. There isn't actually, in fact, any requirement that you take minutes of your meeting. That was a surprise to me. I specifically looked that one up because obviously we all take minutes of meetings, and you take minutes even of meetings when you're meeting informally, just as private citizens. Oftentimes you're in a group, you're going to want to take minutes. My car club takes minutes, So those are things that you do, but strictly speaking, they don't have to be taken, and they can be in any format that you want when you do them. But you do have to keep track of any actions that you take. So those are just a few examples of allowing, there's the requirement to allow for public comment and so forth. There are a number of things the Brown Act require you to do, but certainly not nearly as much as what we traditionally do in the city. So my kind of bottom line on this is, for all of your suggested options, I think any of them would be possible. They can be all different levels, so to speak. You could have reduced staff assistance if you're going to continue as a standing committee. Well, staff could be responsible for posting agendas, but not actually staff the meeting. You could keep minutes, but be responsible for taking your own. You could formulate your own agendas, which I think you mentioned, and send them over. And again, the only staff would post them. You almost could post your own agendas with assistance from the city clerk and unlocking a few meeting location windows to put your agendas up. So, I mean, anything is really possible. I hope that's helpful, but the one that I'm not quite sure about as we talk this afternoon is the question about changing the membership requirements or the makeup of a commission such as the Planning Commission.
Can I ask a couple of clarifying questions? What are the requirements for the location of the meeting?
That it take place within the city of Sebastopol.
Okay. And it has to be a publicly accessible
Yes.
location. Okay. And then what would the implications of, or what would be required for us to say, well, we're not going to be on Zoom anymore, or we recommend that we not be on Zoom anymore? Does that require council to kind of pass something that says you're exempt?
Thank you for bringing up the question on Zoom. So I didn't mention the Zoom aspect of this. When you are carrying your meetings by Zoom, you introduce a large new additional level of complexity to the question. For one thing, there's a statute in California, I think it's AB 2449, that when you do carry your meetings by Zoom, it allows members of the committee or council or planning commission to be absent under certain circumstances, and there's requirements you have to follow and so forth. Also, though, by presenting the meetings on Zoom, you have a requirement that it has to be working. It has to be available. It can't have, glitches where people can't participate. Once you offer it, you really have to make sure it's working for each and every one of your meetings and can't carry forth without it. All the things I was just talking about all require concurrence and agreement by the city council to implement. So reducing or eliminating Zoom for one or more of its bodies, or the level of staff support, certainly the question of the makeup of the membership of the planning commission, all those kinds of issues, all of them would have to be addressed to the city council, and the city council would have to make a decision about that. But there's no requirement essentially to treat all committees the same. City councils can have differing standards for differing committees. So, it's whatever the city council decides.
Great. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have questions for our city attorney? Go ahead.
Yeah, so do we need a staff person present to establish quorum?
You're asking if you need a staff?
Who can establish quorum legally?
Establish quorum.
Oh, quorum.
Yeah.
Yes. We are, I'm not sure it's Robert's rules exactly. I forget which one. We are governed by a set of rules in the city they're not Robert's rules. They're very similar. I forget exactly which one they are. So those have requirements for such things as quorum. There's also a requirement, I believe it is found, I forget which statute it is exactly, but there's statutes that require a quorum. So a quorum is normally established as, majority members of your body.
I think the question is whether a staff member would have to be present in the room to confirm that a quorum had been present.
No, the chair could confirm that a quorum is present.
And so does a Brown Act committee need to have the option of the public to send in letters to staff that the staff then relays to the commission?
Yes, there has to be, public comment requires that not only do you allow public comment at your meetings, but that you provide a means for the public to comment on your items by other means, emails and letters and so forth. And so because those would all be funneled through the city of Sebastopol, there would have to be, I think, some level of staff support to gather public comments that come in by other means, such as a piece of mail or what have you.
And then how much money would be saved if this committee decides to not use any staff anymore?
I might look to our planning staff as to whether there's been an analysis of that. It would have to be an analysis of how many hours are spent and what the cost is for that.
I can give, we have some numbers. I don't have an exact amount, but from what Carrie has been working with on the budgetary stuff, for roughly, and this is just on the tech side, for the community center to do a 2-hour meeting for us, it's about $575 a meeting. For PCA to do the meeting, it's double that, so $1,150. And then
Sorry, what is PCA?
PCA is Petaluma Community Act or Public Community Act. It's yeah, so it's Leslie here. So it's a different group. So the community center, I believe, is handling the city council meetings now, and then PCA is doing our other committee meetings.
So when you say the community center, it's not the time in the room, it's the tech support.
It's the tech support, it's the setup and breakdown before and after the meetings, but it's not the room itself. Currently, right now, from my understanding, is that the community center leases this building to us at no additional charge, but that could change in the future. So that is just on that aspect. As far as staff time goes, I think Carrie had budgeted roughly about half an hour to an hour between Zuzi and I each, because you guys are so great that you guys do your agendas and your action minutes and a lot of that other stuff, and it's very minimal as far as posting stuff to the website or getting that stuff out. So the staff side, I don't think is as much as compared to some of the other committees, but I don't know what the dollar value for that is.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So in terms of the tech piece, you said that there's a $575 amount and a $1,150 amount. So does that mean that for every meeting like this meeting, is the tech costing for this meeting both of those numbers? Do you add them up?
No, it's one or the other. So since PCA is doing our meeting today, it would be the $1,150 dollar amount. If there was a scenario where the community center was able to provide tech support as Cody used to in the past, that would be the $575 amount.
And what if it were only live streaming and there were no Zoom participation?
So if there wasn't any live streaming participation part of it, it would just be, I'm not sure what the room cost would be, because that would be the only component. Currently right now, from my understanding, is we don't get charged for this room under the current lease that the city has with the community center.
So I have to be clear about my question. Let's say that what was happening here was not Zoom participation, but the meeting was just live streamed so that people could watch it. Would that include staff and an IT element? I think the answer is yes.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we would have, so
Yeah.
it would probably be just staff, Zuzi or myself, getting it set up to the live stream portion of it. So it would be included. It's not a separate person for the additional Zoom stuff.
Thank you.
So if we did not have Zoom and live streaming, then we would only need one staff and save quite a bit of money.
Correct.
All right.
So this, can I follow up on my?
Yeah. Just 1 second. I just want to, poor Larry standing.
I'll be happy to sit down.
Okay. I just want to make sure no one has questions for him while he's still standing at the microphone. And then I think we
I have
will,
another question.
you have another question for him. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so there was very little information about this whole issue, and there was nothing in the staff report or anything. So I only glanced this from a slide of the presentation from the manager. And there was a suggestion that the Public Arts Committee could also be dismantled and start being connected with the Center for the Arts. And it would be housed in the Center for the Arts. And there was a suggestion that this commission somehow could work more closely with Sonoma Clean Power, Regional Climate Protection Authority, Zero Waste. And I haven't really seen that develop, that idea. And that's maybe another idea. And I wonder whether you have any information about that.
No, I don't have any information, except I would just observe that that's sort of a hybrid or probably fit into one of the general ideas that the chair alluded to earlier. It's to, meet in some other way, as a private entity or in with some other body. You can do any of those things that you want, but I don't think they've been analyzed.
Well, the Center for the Arts is a volunteer organization. The other are semi-governmental, right?
Center
And
for the
so I
Arts.
wonder what the idea was there.
I'm not sure what the idea is for the Public Arts Committee to
No,
go.
I mean the Regional Climate Protection Authority, Sonoma Clean Power, as being somehow stepping in where we wouldn't be available anymore.
Well, you could take that up with them. I don't know if you could become a committee of them or they could form their own committee in some way. I don't know. I don't think we've explored that.
Yeah, I don't think those came so much from city manager. I think the models that were given were more like we could function more like the library board with or that there was some other peripheral agencies that don't require staff time. But I think you've answered our questions. Xana, did you have another question for John?
Yeah, so this committee meets on the same afternoon as the Art Commission and the Planning Commission. So the numbers you gave, are they just for these 2 hours that we are here, or do they include the whole package?
No, so there's that number that I gave you would be the 2-hour meeting that we're here.
And is it paid like, suppose the Art Commission insists that they want to meet? Would it just mean that it is prorated, the reduction, vis-a-vis what we're paying now?
Do you mean if
you
they?
have to show up here, right? People that work here have to show up. If they work less hours, but still the Planning Commission would require the attendance,
Mhm.
would that mean that the rates will go up for the Planning Commission?
No, they're all I believe what you're asking is they're all separate items when we budget out for those committees and board meetings. So they're roughly the same price, but there are some meetings that we either cancel or postpone. So if it's a long day, like today could have been, I don't think there's not like, if we cancel a meeting, there's no like refund that we're getting back for.
Okay. I would like to, noticing the clock.
Yeah.
Go through and hear each person's like thoughts about what, and I know Alex, you missed some crucial part of the conversation, but so I'll start at the other end and just give everyone 2 minutes to say their opinion about how they think we should move forward. And, we may or may not move on to a vote today, but I think we're getting some good headway.
I'd suggest that the city council people here defer to the
Sure.
rest of the climate. We happy to contribute, but at the end.
Okay. Xana, do you want to speak first of which option seems like
Well,
the
I would
most?
like to have written a financial analysis of how this would help the city. I mean, it may be just a tiny thing. I think it's very important for a group like this that works on a impactful and controversial issue that probably only get bigger to be a Brown Act committee that the public has good access to. For example, we have the Peace Wall Committee, which seems to be a rather private, self-selecting group of people. I think this committee needs to be more public.
So,
So I would not really be in favor of continuing with less staff support and not meeting in a kind of a public, easily accessible place. I think it's good for the public to be able to zoom in. So I'm not in favor of that. So at this point, I need to see the money and what we're saving. And I think it's too early to have a road forwards already, given that we have so little information.
okay. So what I'm hearing from you, just to make sure I understand, you're in favor of remaining a full committee of the city with full staff support and public accessibility through electronic means, but that you'd like more detailed information about what the cost of each meeting is in order to evaluate that for potential savings.
Right, we already had rather minimal staff support. We never minutes made of these meetings. So I know that you don't need to have minutes for the Brown Act.
Yeah, and we have recordings.
But I think that we never had minutes, so minutes are a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 2 staff people present. Maybe we have just 1 present.
Yeah,
right?
in order to have Zoom, we have to have the second staff member present. So
A 7 staff on Zoom.
yeah, because the second staff member manages the.
Is
The
that part of the Brown Act? Yeah.
Well, that's necessary for the fact that our county public meetings have been Zoom bombed repeatedly. And so it
It's-
requires active management.
Yeah, it's meeting facilitation.
Yeah, and I'll
It's
say,
difficult to run the meeting, take care of Zoom, answer questions. I've done it before and it's not too fun, especially when we have members of the public that come in and try to disrupt our meeting. So that's why we have the additional person here.
That additional person
It
is
should
why
be
we're
like
not
an
perceiving
AI
the
app for
interruptions.
Zoom bombs.
Okay, let's move on.
Right.
All right. So, Joshua, I'd like to hear your opinion.
Sure. I'm trying to be practical about this and separate, feelings from thoughts and all that sort of thing. It's, I see how it's a real quandary. I get that the city has issues financially and in terms of people power and all that sort of thing. I can understand the need to cut back, but it feels like we have momentum these days and we have some sense of how things work. And so the option that makes the most sense to me is the version where we keep meeting, but we're not doing Zoom and we ever do staff support, where there's some, in order for this group to function at all, I think that being a citizen group that checks in with the city government as a sort of exalted or a collective of members of the public is not really going to cut it for the work that we've been trying to do and for the purpose to which we were appointed. I feel that we need an active connection to planning and to council in order to just continue to achieve something like our purpose. But if we can do that in a simplified format without Zoom and with less staff support and with some format for getting the kinds of updates and staying in the loop that we need to do, which, has kind of been an issue. I mean, frankly, the level of integration with city government has been an ongoing process challenge at times and in terms of getting into the timeline. So if we can have some assurances that there is still intent on the part of the city to maintain those connections with departments and with process, then I would feel that we could operate in a stripped down meeting format effectively. The other versions of, again, stepping back to a community group or dissolving to some further county level just don't seem like the same thing to me.
Great, thank you. Phil?
I'll admit that I also want to see the full numbers just to see how it goes. My guesstimation is it's $15,000 a year or so, maybe more with both of your times. And if there could be just one member of you and not drop some services for Zoom, I think that would be something I could be okay with. But other than that, I definitely think we need to be a firm member of the town, like a legitimized council. I don't know what the expression is for that.
Can you clarify what you mean about the Zoom aspect or the digital aspects?
Yeah, I believe the council mentioned that to be fully brownout compliant, we didn't need to have Zoom. And once we have Zoom, that becomes a whole another animal. And then it has requirements from that. So if that one aspect were dropped, how would that impact our impact for the city? And how would it impact the way the city is able to interact with the climate action committee to get positive things done and things that it would like to influence. So I was wondering if that one particular point could be a point of negotiation.
All right.
But then the other thing that I'm kind of responsible for is mentioning that somebody could be, if the council were dissolved, right? Like if things were to explode, worst case scenario, then there could be a climate action committee member or someone climate focused on the planning commission, because most of the real work for climate action comes through what happens in development of the plan, the city's plan. And that was just a thought.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you would be definitely in favor of this continuing as an appointed official city body, but letting go of Zoom, reducing staff support. And then if that wasn't possible, your second choice would be to have a planning commission, request a planning commission seat for climate.
And that would be only if the entire thing went to a private group.
Okay.
But I could also, I'll just leave it at that before it becomes too confusing.
Alex?
So just clarifying here. This is just we're not voting yet. Okay. So I think the challenge for me just in looking at this issue is there's a lot of resources in Sonoma County that are climate focused. I think the challenge that I continue to see is having communication and accessibility to towns like ours and others in the county and really having a clear goal of how we're connecting the dots and how we're to those organizations and how we're utilizing those resources effectively, which is really not an answer to this question. But so I would say that to me is the biggest challenge. I think if we're looking for a solution, I don't see a solution with less resources giving us more of a carbon, obviously a negative carbon impact. And I know there's some pretty pressing goals from the state. I think I don't know if can I propose another solution or an idea? So I know we talked about reducing meetings as a way to reduce the resource impact on staff. That to me, if we could do a hybrid version of one of those things, have just a less technological impact and go down to meetings. Because I think ultimately too, as I understand it, this budget constraint is hopefully temporary within the next, a few years. But I think even if we have some level of resources, whether that's we meet every other month, we meet quarterly, that may or may not be effective, but I think it would be a way to stay connected to the city and have us continue to support the climate goals that we have. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's the best way I can say it. In terms of operating in a shorter term window, until maybe we can reassess from the next physical year if we can go back to more meetings or whatever. But that would be my only way to try to hopefully step down or reduce our budget impact.
So I'm hearing you also in favor of maintaining our status as an official city body with reduced cost associated with, and I think you were saying reduce the tech burden of take the tech burden off the meetings. That's a biased language. Reduce the tech component of the meetings.
Yeah.
And potentially reduce the number of meetings as well.
Yeah.
So I think I'm next, if we're doing council last, and I'm pretty agnostic in some ways because I can see pros and cons to almost every route. But I do think that when it comes down to like if we're voting today, I would say we should maintain ourselves as a official city body for all the reasons spoken by other members, and the fact that we did a visioning session less than 6 months ago, I think, or 6 months ago, and decided that that's what we thought was best. So stay the course. I also am in favor of dropping the tech component of the meetings, since that is apparently legal. And I'm not necessarily in favor of decreasing the number of meetings. I would echo Joshua's point that retaining some staff presence, whether that would be every month or every other month, or some way that we're still getting staff updates, would be maybe the staff doesn't stay for the whole meeting, or some other format that seems like it's a really useful part of doing our work, is having some staff presence. So that would be where I would come down, and I will pass it to our council members to opine.
I would suggest that before we decide, like not make a decision today, but put out a survey to the rest of the board members so that you're getting everybody's feedback and opinion, if that's possible.
Yeah, but what I'm wanting to hear is your opinion.
Yeah, well, that was one of my thoughts. So, because we're barely a quorum. I mean, without Diana and I here, we wouldn't even have quorum here. So I think there's a lot of missing voices here. So I think if you are not if you decide not to be a city, a city committee, it would be much harder to get back into be a city committee later. So probably, especially from what I'm hearing here, that most of you want to continue with the city. And considering that it would be harder to get back in, it's probably better to stay in if you're not sure. So, and I did speak with the Public Arts Committee, and they discussed this today. And this is on video, so I don't think it's private, right? Because they had their meeting videotaped. They want to move, they are offering to move to 4 times a year meetings. Those would be staffed meetings without Zoom, but they will continue to meet monthly. I don't know if they are going to be talking about meeting in the room, but it would be without staff, and it might be in someone's home, a private place or so. I didn't catch that part of it, but they would continue to meet monthly with 4 times a year with staff in a formal setting. And that's what they decided. So.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's all I have. Yeah.
Yeah, so just listening to what I've heard here and kind of reflecting it back, I would be just listening to what I hear and thinking about what seems to be most important and what I know about the city council and how these groups work. My vote would be to continue I'd encourage you to continue as an official city committee, and to consider abandoning the Zoom and live stream option to reduce the costs. And I'm hearing kind of a potential hybrid. I was thinking about this as Councilmember Mara was talking. The connection with staff is important, but I kind of like the idea of continuing your regular meetings in this room where the public will know to find you with posted agendas, but then having staff present on a quarterly basis, which it sounds like is maybe what the Public Arts Committee is talking about. So that seems like a way that you could reduce the expenses that would hopefully be persuasive to the city council and might actually align with Public Arts Committee if in fact they end up going that direction. So that's my thought. And then the staff would need to schedule the room. I do think it's important that you're in this room and that you have an official room that is a city supported room. You might have to set up the tables yourselves, but I think you could do that, and the chairs. And then the other piece is I hadn't thought of the fact, thank you, Zeno, that because this is a cost that staff would have to consider managing email comments, public comment. But I think that's an important aspect too. And then posting only action minutes that would be drafted by this committee. And then as a secondary backup position, I would urge you, if the city council is unwilling to accept that, to push for a seat on another existing committee, given what I've heard here.
I have a question for John. Do you know what the Public Arts Committee decided in terms of the location of their monthly meetings? Did they discuss this?
Carrie is in charge of the Public Arts Committee, and I showed up, I believe, after they had taken their vote on that. So
Okay.
I don't know the official outcome unless Zuzi does, and she wants to share that with the group.
So they didn't discuss the location. Lars Langberg did mention that his office might be a good option, but they didn't mention a location.
Okay, thank you.
But my understanding is that the Brown Act requires a Brown Act committee to meet in a publicly accessible place. You cannot meet at home, right? Or your
Well,
office.
the home would just have to be open to the public, correct?
Yes, you could do that, but it has to be publicly accessible.
Does that include ADA accessible?
And it would probably have to be posted on the agenda, the location.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, restaurants, happy hour, all that's allowed. Well, I think we've had a kind of startling level of agreement here.
I have one more question. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I noticed that the Peace Wall Committee is not a Brown Act committee. But certainly it needed staff time. So when it proposes to add names to the wall, staff prepared a document. And so that kind of service, like with Vision Zero, staff needs to present this to City Council. So it is an order, maybe we haven't talked about that yet, that there is always staff time involved in bringing ideas and proposals to the City Council.
So, Zeno, for the Peace Wall portion of the staff consideration, those nominations and that report is all provided to staff. All that we do is just convert it into the template that we use for our city council staff reports and then present those to council as a consent item. So there's very minimal staff time. So we're not writing a whole report for those nominations. That all of that information is given to us. We just format it in a way that needs to go, that is the protocol for staff reports for city council.
Yeah, but sometimes we say, well, let's apply for this grant or so, and staff would have to do more work on that, right?
Are you talking about public arts or Peace Wall?
No, I'm talking about us. We would propose an action by the city council to direct staff to do something. I mean, that has been happening in the past.
Yeah, so there would be some sort of staff component. I guess if it depends on what the outcome of the group is. If it goes to something similar to the Peace Wall group, then the report would have to come in essentially complete, and then staff would just convert it to the format that needs to go to city council. If it's still as a city group and you give us kind of a rough draft and you want us to review it, then yes, there would be more staff time involved in that component of it. So I don't know if that answers your
I'm talking
question.
about the next step. So we propose something to city council. City council directs staff to follow up, to inquire around some climate intervention. That would still be possible, right?
So I just want to chime in here for clarification. So at the moment, so I think what you said, Zeno, is sure, if no matter what, let's say in the current form or in a future form, if the Climate Action Committee forwarded a request to staff, then staff could forward that to City Council, and City Council could direct staff to take some action based on that that proposal. I would think that in this tailored down format, and I don't see this as a problem with this particular sophisticated group, probably what staff would want is for their regular staff report format to be respected to the extent that this group could respect it and provide the content in that format in order to streamline the process. But I think that's happening already, isn't it? I mean, that's my sense. Yes? That's a question.
What is the concern? I'm not understanding your concerns, or the point that you're trying to
Well,
make.
I'm trying to understand what staff is doing as a consequence of what we're doing here. So, for example, last time we talked about the active or the Highway 12, Highway 16 plans, and we decided to write a letter to staff, and the staff brought that into that conversation with the consultant that went to be hired. So that is an action by staff that is kind of happening because of something we're doing. So staff is not just here to take a role and to direct Zoom, but there's more of it
So
involved.
I see what
And I want to
you're
make
saying,
sure
that there's
that
staff.
will be continuing.
Well, I think mostly staff time as a consequence of what this committee does is, for the most part, make recommendations to council. So then if the council decides to take action on something, that's staff time being devoted to something as a consequence of council action, not necessarily like this committee's. Like they could take action based on a citizen group recommendation or on their own recommendation. So as a recommending body, I don't think there's a lot of downstream time that we're taking, staff time that we're taking. Those are council actions that would necessitate, like if we said we recommend that this grant be applied for and the council said, yes, we're going to instruct the staff to apply for that grant, then that's it's not like our staff time, I guess. It's not.
Yeah, and I don't see that changing. I mean, it's the same thing that's been going on. If staff is here quarterly, then this group is still submitting any requests that they might want to submit to the city council through staff, but it might just be quarterly.
Just looking at this problem from another angle here, what are our constraints on revenue production? Like if we had an event, or I'm just going to say this is like a silly thing, but like we sell t-shirts, obviously, like, is there a constraint from being a city committee, or where is kind of the line there? Because I know we've looked at doing potential events in the past. So that was one angle. The other angle is maybe there's I'm using Steve's brain here. Maybe a way we leverage some sort of permitting or something to get more. If we're incentivizing people to get more electrified, maybe there's a way we can fund the committee with the increase in permitting fees, which sounds really exciting. But I don't know. Is there any other, like, is there a way we can look at this from a proactive standpoint from the budgeting side of? Does you see what I'm saying?
Well, okay. I think one of those streams of thought, Steve's brain, is official income that would be coming into the city that could be set aside to climate committee. And I think my understanding is at this point, any income coming into the city is not being set aside for the climate committee. But the other question was, can we fundraise independently? And I believe we got that answered in the past as yes, we could sell t-shirts. There's some mechanism for us to do fundraising that could support our work. So if that was a way we wanted to go, we could say, okay, well, we want to, we're going to get $1,100 every month donated to pay for our Zoom. So, yeah. Phil, I think you had a hand up.
I was just going to comment, and it's becoming increasingly like redundant, but if we met quarterly, our interactions with Jay offline through the quarter, would those be could we have regular interactions as we need to know things or as we need to produce things, because quarterly may not be frequent enough for or the timeliness to respond to certain things?
So, John, I'll ask for your input on that, but I would say that it does get complicated by Brown Act if we're like the working groups could independently ask questions of staff. But the whole committee, I don't believe, could have like a bunch of emails pinging about the same thing. Yeah, I'm
I
not
was
sure
thinking
I'm
about
following.
speaking formally once per month, or doing it in an organized way that respects his time, of course, but just so that it didn't show up at a meeting. He could do it on his own
Yeah,
time.
I
Does that
think
make sense? Or
Larry
is that
has
terribly
something
rambling?
to say.
I'm sorry, Kenna, but I'm going to have to leave in about 5 minutes. And since you're just barely have a quorum, wanted you to know.
Okay, I think that I was considering. Sorry.
Oh, good.
Oh yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was only going to briefly comment that informal meetings, like in between the more formal meetings, would still be subject to the Brown Act. It would still be a meeting of your committee. So you'd have to do some formalities.
Thank you. Yes.
I just wanted to say that the subject of meeting quarterly is something that's a possibility that came up in the last round of comments, but I don't think initially that was part of the proposal that we were responding to. So just to say that is an idea, that is an option. That, like, I for one don't think meeting quarterly would be enough, for instance.
Let's go around and see how like each
If
person.
I could just tie it up a little bit. And I would hope that if we were only expecting to see staff quarterly, that we might ask for something like a monthly half-page summary, just so that the sort of planning department reports that are part of our meetings are acknowledged in some fashion. Or if staff came monthly but came for just half an hour, just for the sake of that check-in, and then we carried on without them. I would propose something more like that rather than just going to full quarterly, because as we've seen, the timeliness of our schedule interacting with city council, agenda making and whatnot can hamper us in some cases. So.
Did you finish what you were trying to say?
Joshua kind of formulated it better.
Okay, I think it'd be good to just go around quickly and get people's opinions on cadence of meetings. Yeah, so I think that quarterly came up in terms of public arts. So there is a simplicity to saying, we're going to do what public arts is doing. On the other hand, our committee has a lot more different threads and kind of hands in different pieces of city government than public arts does. And they have their kind of one topic, and we're all over the place. So we may want to align with their plan, or we may say that's not the right plan for us, given the different kind of composition and projects of our committee. So I think we'll just go in the same order and say, like, what cadence do you think? Like, how often should we be meeting? How often do we want staff support? Yeah, would be great. You want to start, Zaino?
I'm going to depart, but
do you-
I defer.
do you wanna
No,
weigh
I
in?
trust this group. I think it's much more important that whatever this group decides is the appropriate number of meetings, I'm good with that.
All right. Thank you so much, Diana. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's too early for me to agree with quarterly meetings. I think if we figured out how to make the working groups more functional and more kind of organized, the whole structure that could happen. I'm thinking about what the cost savings would be, because some of these contracts are, I can understand it, kind of like a year-long contract to provide Zoom. You cannot just call somebody in or say, we don't need you. So again, I'm coming back to that earlier point that I would like to see some kind of financial statement around this, how these things work. And it seemed that we are kind of shooting in the dark a bit around that.
Okay. So, Joshua, I heard you. Well, if you could just clarify. Let me write it down.
Yeah, I'm happy to meet monthly. We discussed bi-monthly at one point. I think that might perhaps be possible if we tightened up our game a little bit in some fashion. I think quarterly would not quite be often enough to keep momentum going. With respect to what we're talking about, if we eliminate the Zoom and video component, if we're able to get that approval, that sounded like a good part of the budget. If we reduce staff from 2 to 1, I don't know if we want to consider having 1 rather than 2 city council members on the committee, if that helps at all and still allows us, connectivity. And if we decide that we have a meeting cadence that we want, say we want to meet monthly, they don't feel like they can provide us with staff for that entire meeting for every month for the year, well, maybe we can negotiate down to staff is here for a reduced period of time at some of those meetings or all of those meetings, or instead of, for instance, planning department report, they prepare something that's added to our agenda that we can review at the meeting, and we could summarize our sort of action minutes for staff and send that back to them afterwards. So there might be a version where that connectivity is preserved with less staff time engagement. But I would suggest that we go for the meeting schedule that we think serves our work, and then we sort of allow staff to say how much they feel that they could provide in terms of engagement with us. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Phil or Alex?
Okay, so in order of my first I feel like we do a lot, and we're doing a lot more, and then we're interacting with the city quite a bit. And the more that we make contact with the county, and the more coordination that we can have with the city, I think is something that is really important to me, and keeping the ball rolling and everything like that. So I definitely want to meet monthly, and as much interaction with the planning department we can have, is important to me, and I think valuable to the city. I think it's a valuable thing. But that said, we can cut down on the technical time, and that may cut down our supervised time to 1 person. Do I understand that? Like we may not need Susie as much. And, I would be in favor if we were meeting monthly. Maybe if planning, like if John Jay were here for like an hour, maybe not 2 hours, that's fine, and then that would, in my brain, knock down the cost of this committee meeting monthly to about $6,000 or less, which is his money and not the tech money. And so that's my first.
Great. Thank you. Alex?
I don't think I really have any comments right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will share my thoughts is that as much as I would like to have a month off between meetings, I think the monthly does help our momentum going. And I love Phil's idea of just saying just have staff here for the first hour, 1 staff member for half the meeting. I do think that maintaining the connection should save quite a bit of money. So that would be my recommendation, monthly with staff for the first hour of the meeting. Sandy, do you want to weigh in?
So my recommendation is that whatever you decide, you substantiate it in terms of, write out, here's what we're doing. If someone is willing to do this, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're going to recommend staying this way, or this is what we'd like to do, and here's why. And substantiate it so the council understands what the contributions you're making and the value. I don't think it has to be a big deal, but some substance to it. You kind of want to convince them that you don't want to just be a non-government organization. You want to stay connected, and here's why, and here's what we're doing, and here's what we have in process. It could just be a one-page clear statement. We want this, and here's where we're reducing, here's where we're willing to reduce, and this is why we need what we need.
Great,
So
great
that's my
input.
feedback. Yeah.
Steve, I'd love to hear from you. Calling for public comment right now.
Well, I'm not sure how helpful comments will be. I was on the RCPA Citizens Advisory Committee for 4 years. They meet quarterly, and both Zeno and Joshua are on there. And I think, honest to say, that advisory committee doesn't do much. I spent 4 years of not doing much. Our committee is pretty unique. We live and die on the work of the subcommittees. Unlike any other committee in town, that's where it's at. It's not staff. They're here as very much just a slight supportive role. It's not council. Sorry, it's not. It's the work of the subcommittees. And our committee provides a valuable service. If you were to talk to the RCPA or the Bayron reps, and you mentioned that you work with climate in Sebastopol, they always say, oh man, you guys do so much. To us, we feel like we're not really necessarily accomplishing what we want to accomplish. But from the outside world, we actually do have some stuff to be proud about. If we were not a committee of the city, we would not have had the framework done. We would not have had the electrification study done. These are things that allow us to fight in a higher weight class. I hate the boxing metaphor, but it's true. And we're just starting to get some wheels turning. So I would recommend that we continue as a committee. We cut back where we can on staff, and if it means eliminating Zoom to make that possible, and it kind of sounds like that's the only way to make that possible, to have just one staff person here. We keep meeting monthly, maybe bi-monthly. That's a possibility, but quarterly, it probably won't cut it. And once again, it depends on these working committees. The Public Arts Committee, you know what? They get money from developers as a fee. So they can, I'm not denigrating their work, but they're in the envious position of being able to decide, how can we spend that money in a valuable way? We're not that. We're not the Planning Commission, where staff basically floats the boat. If staff wasn't doing the work, there wouldn't be much happening. It's all staff driven. So we're appreciative that the city has allowed us this venue, but we're also recognize that we're providing a valuable service to the city. I only mentioned two of the big study type things. The compost giveaway, well, I think legally the city is required to distribute compost. How would that work if we didn't have the committee out there making that happen? The organizing that Alex did for that event with Bayron, if the committee wasn't around, we may not have had an event. And now we have this contractor event coming up. Once again, it's an example of us fighting above our weight class. Let's keep it up. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Point of process. Do I need to call for public comment from Zoom?
Yep.
Okay, any public comment from Zoom today? Please raise your hand if you have a public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
I have a question, I think for Sandra and John. What's the timeline for pursuing this issue? It sounds like we're being asked to sort of say what we want. We're getting close to be able to say what we want. How do we submit that? When is it going to be discussed, et cetera, et cetera? How long is this going to play out?
So I believe, and this is what I caught from the tail end of the public arts, is that through the rest of the fiscal year, this group is still meeting as is, no changes. So that would be the end of June, June 30th.
So 2 more meetings.
Correct. And then the changes would be looking at next fiscal year's budget, which starts in July 1st. So it is kind of a quick turnaround. And as Diana mentioned, or Carrie might have mentioned, I believe May and June meetings for City Council will be the budgetary items and stuff like that. So that's when these things would come to the City Council as, the options going forward.
So if we do not vote in the next 6 minutes, that's okay.
Yes. So I would highly recommend having a vote by the May meeting, and it be very early on. If there's any additional discussion that needs to happen between the group, because I know that we are missing a few members here. I think sending out a survey to the rest of the group is a good idea as well. That way you can get some initial feedback and thought. And if it comes down to taking that survey information and turning it into an agenda item that's sent out to the group so they can all review and discuss it, and then that's what you guys are voting on, kind of as the letter of what your group is, what it does, why it's important, and here's what you guys feel is the path forward. I would recommend that being on the next meeting agenda.
Yes, I do. I would rather postpone the vote because of the absent members today. If we don't have to get the vote done today. So it sounds like we don't have to. So I do think that it would be good for us to have a survey. I will try to design one that, and do we have does the city have a Survey Monkey? No, okay.
I was going to say Microsoft Forms is a really good tool and it's free.
Okay, perfect. I know Survey Monkey has free amount. Anyway, I will figure it out. Send out a survey to staff. Thank you guys so much for putting in a lot of clear opinions so far. And would anyone be interested in drafting the I'm looking at you, Steve, based on your eloquent comments, a letter along the line of what Sandy is recommending, where we delineate our contributions to the city and the value that the city is getting from keeping us as an official body. Don't all raise your hands at once.
I think one of our committee meetings, the subcommittees, we can get together and kind of like piece it about amongst ourselves to get a draft that we can have on the agenda next month to vote on.
Okay, so you are saying that each working group should provide a draft, or you're saying that your working group can provide a draft a week prior to next month's meeting to get on the agenda? Yes?
I guess I was volunteering myself, yes.
Thank you. You can watch the recording of Steve.
You will help.
All right. Well, does anyone else have any other comments about this agenda item or questions for Larry? All right. Yeah, go
Are we
ahead.
getting a financial breakdown of the maybe for the survey, that if you
Yes,
do
numbers
this,
will help.
you
Yeah,
say
what,
this, and it's like 0.5% of our problem. Like, put it in the context of the city's challenge.
John, can you help me with the numbers?
Yeah, we can put something together as far as overall rough costs for what each CAC meeting costs.
Like each component, like the tech component, the
Yeah.
staff time, what the cost difference of having only one staff or one staff for halftime, or kind of the different ideas. I'm sorry to make extra work for you, but I appreciate you. All right. So we, unfortunately, do you have anything for chair report? No, me neither. So any other input from members regarding next meeting's agenda? Alex, we did talk about that. Maybe we should talk about lessons learned from the low attendance at the very well programmed April meeting next time, and some collaboration, communication strategies for RCPA, and obviously the recommendation for this committee's continuation plan would be on the agenda. Any other agenda items? Yeah.
I just want to note that the next compost event is actually slightly before our next committee meeting. So just to say, some folks have already talked to me about helping out. I might send an email through the city to this group again, just a week and a half or so before that event as a reminder. So it's second Saturday, May 11th, Saturday before Mother's Day. It's a nice time. I will email the public list as well. Don't feel obligated if you can't, but yeah, like 4 hands on deck or so just makes it all go really smoothly. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Any action items from today? Action item review? All right. So
I
we're,
have another.
yeah.
So Phil got this letter from Jada of the county to get input to the comprehensive action plan that the county is developing. And I wonder whether she could be invited to present what is going on and how we can be useful to make that connection with the county.
Do you want to reach out to her and let us know?
Yeah, so I did send you a request for the next agenda to add this, and I can have her come and speak. I think she would come.
Great. Thank you. So we are going to adjourn until our meeting of May 12th. Thank you all so much.
Recording
14th.
stopped.
14th?
Thank you.
Did I say I meant 14th? No, look, it's written right there.